And Councilor Majok, can you hear me?
Yes. Well, let's get this going. I'm joined by my colleague, Councilor Hogan, Councilor Driscoll, Councilor White, Councilor Allen. I think that's about it. Yeah, that's about it. Chief Buckner, welcome. Chief Cecil, Greg Lowe, John Capanis, everyone, thank you for joining us. Chief Buckner, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I don't know who's going to take over. Is it you or Chief Cecil?
Chief Trudell is actually here that will lead us for the most part. Were there particular questions that you all had that you, or point of emphasis that you had questions, concerns about?
No, pretty much. Is to hear the plan. If there are questions, they will follow after that. And for anyone that is joining us today that hasn't seen the memo that was sent out, the purpose of this meeting today here is to hear the department's plan for ATVs and dirt bikes, fireworks, loud music, and juvenile break-ins. So that's the purpose of the meeting today, and I'm sure councilors will have questions later, and we will save them for that.
Okay, I will turn it over to Chief Trudell, and then we'll take whatever questions you may have.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. So I'll break this down into the components that you spoke about. First off, talking about let's talk about the dirt bike and ATV operations. So for the last, I want to say 1920, and now starting this year, we have a operational plan specifically geared towards intercepting and enforcing the use of ATVs and dirt bikes on city streets. I can forward the operational plan to any of the council members for your review, but I'll just speak in generalities. There's some things in this I really don't want to disclose, but I will give you the plan. So we put out a sergeant and up to 6 officers per detail. We utilize smooth cars, which is unmarked cars, and marked cars, to intercept ATVs and dirt bikes. We will not get into chases with the dirt bikes or the ATVs. Sorry, Rich, I just saw your picture up there. We will not get into the use of pursuits. We just can't do it. You threw me off, Rich. We will not, we're not pursue, but we will follow. And once the ATV or dirt bike stops, we will engage and we will handle any ticketing or towing from there. In 2020, we conducted 18 details of this nature. We got a total of 78 UTTs. We towed 33 ATVs or dirt bikes, and those were across the entire city, north, southwest, and southeast in 2020. To date, and I have a very short presentation on dirt bikes here I'll share with you as far as what our detail footprint has been in 2021. So 2 details to date, one in March, one in April. We've had others scheduled. The weather has not been cooperative with us at all. We recognize that Sundays are a high day for ATV dirt bike use. We had one planned for not Mother's Day this past, but the previous Sunday that just got completely washed out. So our plan is to have a detail per week, weather permitting. But so far this year, we had 15 offenders, 33 traffic tickets, and we've towed or seized 10 ATVs or dirt bikes. And again, we plan to have this detail out weekly going forward through the summer. This is a flavor of what the types of bikes that we're getting, both dirt bikes, ATVs. We are seeing a lot of mini bikes. And if you know what I mean by the mini bikes, they're very small wheels, they're very small. We will take them as well, but they're very low speeds. Clearly a nuisance, clearly a problem, but not to the degree that are, you know, the pictures that are up here that you see. Further ends, we have worked, and I sent Albany's ordinance and Buffalo's ordinance regarding dirt bikes and ATVs to a couple of counselors and to Kristen Smith. I know that they're working on that, and I think Kristen's on here and can speak to that. But from the police perspective, the UTTs and the traffic tickets aren't the deterrence that we need on this, right? I mean, it takes a while to go to traffic court, and then traffic court has to provide either a fine or a levy, depending on the outcome of the case. That's not going to be enough to deter the use of these ATVs and dirt bikes on our city streets. What right now is the biggest deterrence is when we tow these, there is a per day storage fee that gets added up, and then we will only release a bike that somebody can prove that they own, and there's certain things that records looks at. So at the end of this, it could be looking at a 5, 6, 7 day storage fee. That is the biggest deterrent that we have right now, and clearly that's not a lot, which is why we need this ordinance that in a second I'll let Kristen speak to. I also pulled some crash data relative to ATVs and dirt bikes, and we all know that they're a problem, but when you look at from 2018 to current, we've had 22 crashes, 3 fatalities, 1 serious physical injury crash where some pedestrians were struck on Salina Street by Wood Ave, 13 other crashes with injuries, and then 5 without injuries. So just the crashes alone are significant when it comes to the use of these. And we're just early into 2020 with 1 fatality and 1 serious physical injury already. So I guess other than that, I will turn it over to Kristen if she has anything on the ordinance thus far.
Thanks, Chief. Just turning my video on here. Yeah, we're drafting the ordinance. We received requests from multiple counselors and from the administration to do something modeled along the lines of Albany. And the provision of that ordinance would allow SPD to charge a fine plus a redemption fee, which the individual would have to pay in order to get their bike back from the impoundment lot. And right now, the proposed fee level, it's a $650 fee plus a $2,000 redemption amount. So total amount of $2,650. So we're just going over some final wording for draft, just making sure we're not missing anything from an operational perspective. And then I will be circulating it very soon so that counselors can take a look and see if they have any additional input. So that's where we are, very close on that.
That is fantastic, Kristen. Thank you. Any other presentation, Chief?
Could I Councilor Majok, do you mind if I ask a question or two there?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that Chief Trudell and Chief Buckner were done presenting.
I don't have anything else on the dirt bike detail. Clearly, there's other topics, but if we open it up for questions on dirt bikes or ATVs, I'm done with what we have as a plan.
Okay, let's let Councilor Driscoll go ahead.
So I'm just curious there. So if we could clarify, so when someone gets stopped, this fine and redemption fee you were talking about, Kristen, that would be, so the situation would be someone is recklessly using an ATV in a residential neighborhood or a business district, and the police stop them, and then that those 2 fines are applied, the fee and the redemption fee. So if officers stop them, it would be $2,650 to get their bikes back.
Yes. And the ordinance would make it unlawful. It basically piggybacks on state law and makes it unlawful to operate these on any city street and in any city park. And so if SPD is able to observe that conduct, then they would be subject to a ticket based on this ordinance, not just the state law that we had been relying on. And it would be, I think we work with an outside impoundment lot. Currently, they have to, Chief Trudell, you may need to jump in for me on this one. I don't know operationally what happens now because you do impound the bikes now, correct?
Yeah, that's what I was getting into as far as a per day storage fee. That's the only thing really that's on the books right now. But that's the private tow company that charges that until they can prove the bike's theirs and get it back.
Yep, so now there would be an additional fine, which is intended to serve as a deterrent, because it would be, it adds that extra expense to get your bike back. We can't completely confiscate them and keep them forever, but we can lawfully charge a fee for the redemption.
What is the current lot fee, Chief Trudell? Do you know?
Don't quote me on this, but it's upwards $78 a day, something along that lines. I can get you the specifics on that, but that's based on the tow company. That's not the SPD or the city.
Right. No, that's fine. Ballpark is fine. So somewhere in the ballpark of 75, 80, 100 a day, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Counselor,
Excellent.
Shaw,
Anything, oh, go ahead.
Chief, how many of these, and I appreciate your initiative on this. I know you've been leading the charge when we've talked about this for the last couple of years, but how many of these characters ask for their vehicles back?
So
The ones
quite a
we
few.
impounded like last year.
Yeah, so quite a few. We tracked that actually because I wanted to see how many of these we actually released, the time frame we released them. I mean, if you were to look at some of those pictures are $3,000, $4,000 pieces of equipment. So people will pay to get them back. And then some of them are not that great, and they're not worth 5 days of storage, honestly. So they don't. But a good deal of them do get returned to the owner.
What is, as far as the vehicle or the law, is there a mark on their license for operating an illegal vehicle or without a helmet or anything like that?
It's all vehicle. Yep. So it's vehicle and traffic law, and I don't know the exact points per violation, right? The courts handle that with DMV, but these were all New York State V&T law infractions, and there's a whole section on unregistered, uninsured ATVs. And then, what the courts do with them, that's a whole other thing as far as the fines. But there are points.
Well, and obviously they have to show a proof of purchase if they actually own the vehicle, obviously, right?
And that, yes, but that is one thing that when reviewing Buffalo's and Albany's law, I think it was in particular Buffalo's, they actually called out what DMV considers proof of ownership, because you would be surprised the amount of things that get brought to records trying to say that they prove that they own a $3,000 bike, written in crayon on a lined piece of paper, those types of things.
Okay, so we'll incorporate that into the law specifically.
Yes.
This new legislation.
Yes.
And obviously these folks don't have insurance on these vehicles, do they? Or
most of the time they don't. No. And New York State, believe it or not, New York State law requires you to register an ATV, whether you use it on your private property or not. So you still have to have them registered no matter what. And then if you're going to operate them on streets that are authorized for it, of which city streets, none of them are, you have to have it insured. So there are additional fine, traffic tickets that we can issue for that. The real deal here is that they're most of the time, totally illegal. So you could hang a ton of different traffic citations on these folks. That's not really what we're looking to do. We want to stop the behavior. And that's why we think this redemption fee, if it's going to cost you a lot of money just to get it back, the point is to stop them from even using them on the city streets. And I know you probably realize that. I just wanted to throw that out there.
right, and I agree with you, but they should get all the citations they deserve.
Okay.
These people are imperiling public safety. They operate in a manner that is appalling and really, I can't believe how reckless it is. And I see it all the time, not only for the general public, but for themselves. So, I commend you on this, and I commend Kristen on this too, and your whole department. Chief, anytime you can get those guys out there to patrol the streets, we are inundated with this type of problem, as you well know. So I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
we get the help from the county as well. This is not just a city problem. I was forwarded videos from across the county, bands of dirt bikes and ATVs. And the only other thing that I will add is these are not cheap details to run. And that's why the $2,000 redemption fee is not an exorbitant amount of money. These are expensive when you count in all of the officers that are involved, the record staff that has to process an ATV out or in, the fuel costs alone, and I can get into that with the counselors a little bit more, but the fuel costs alone, they're expensive.
The chief, I had a conversation with Kristen earlier, and she said that I guess we're limited by state law to $2,000. Is that right, Kristen?
That's correct. If we wanted to charge more than $2,000, we would need a separate piece of legislation, a local law that changes our current local law that caps penalties.
Well, I would love to get this into legislation as soon as possible. I have absolutely no sympathy for these folks at all. So if we could charge them $50,000, I'd be happy with it. But so thank you for your involvement.
Anybody else was question on dirt bikes and ATVs?
Yeah, I had a few more. Kristen, you referenced the New York State law a couple of times, and sorry if I missed it. What does the New York State law specify, and how is it applicable within the city limits?
Do you mean the for the dirt bikes specifically, or the penalty level?
Yeah, the dirt bikes. You kind of referenced like a general New York State law earlier.
Well, vehicle and traffic law, the vehicle and traffic law that Chief Trudell was talking about, that the vehicle and traffic law applies rules to the use of these. And so that's what they're currently using to
Stop them.
to retrieve these. And so this would be layered on top of that.
So currently the New York State law says that, is that, Chief Joe, is that what specifies that they're not allowed within city limits? Is that where that comes from?
So the law says they're only allowed on highways that are designated for ATV use. Now, there are rural areas, I'm not sure of any in Onondaga County, but for sure, let's just say Oswego County, that designates them for their use. You can't use them anywhere else. And none of the streets in the city of Syracuse are designated as ATV use. And that's how the V&T law fits into ATVs and dirt bikes being illegal on city streets.
Gotcha.
Could I ask one more question? Or
Yes, please.
Kristen, so the $2,000 fine, that would be up to judgment of the judge, obviously, right?
You cut out there for a minute. Can you say that again? It would be up to the judgment of...
See, the $2,000 fine would be up to the judge, correct?
No. So this would be a fine that the city assesses.
Oh, okay, the city. So there's no judge involved in this, correct? To get the vehicle back, they'd have to pay $2,000 to the city. In other words.
Correct.
Okay. So okay.
We're not convicting them of a crime. It's just a. I mean, that's a different.
So and so to go along with that, could we have like would it be a one strike and done type thing? I mean, I could see them paying $2,000, one of these folks, and then doing it again. And could we keep the vehicle then, or what?
Joe Barry, jump in if you want. My understanding is that to completely confiscate someone's property, we would probably have a constitutional issue.
Correct. Joe Barry, first assistant. The Supreme Court case law that, the forfeiture of the property entirely is a whole different matter versus temporarily impounding it. And I think we'd have to explore that issue further to come to a conclusion on that. But impoundment is clearly allowable.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor.
Councilman Joe?
Yes.
Yeah, just a clarifying question. When we use the term, and this is, I think, for Kristen, when we use the term parks, is that inclusive of like Harbor Brook Basin, our water reservoirs, which are embedded in green spaces but are not designated at parks, but are used many times because of the hills and the valleys for these purposes. Is that inclusive? Can it be inclusive?
I don't know if those are included in our definition of parks, because this part of the amendment would go into the section of our laws regarding parks. But there's also a provision of this draft law that would say they're not allowed on private property unless the private property owner gives permission, and there's a presumption that they do not have permission. So it would be covered, if not as a park, it would be covered if it's city property, say the reservoir. We would say, we're the property owner, we didn't give you permission, therefore it's not allowed.
Yeah, maybe 2 weeks ago, I got a call that bikes were just on that dirt trail around the reservoir. People were jogging and
Oh,
kids
wow.
were walking, and they were just driving all around that circle.
That's incredibly dangerous. Wow.
Very dead. Plus, there's a huge hill on both of them. So, if there's any way that I guess what you just said does cover that.
I think we're covered. It's, it's clearly city property. We're not allowing it on our property.
Okay.
And for me, I just want to make sure that, once the legislation is ready, we will have another committee meeting to discuss it. So if you have questions regarding that legislation specifically, save them or just talk to Kristen directly. But I want to make sure, even me as I listen here, Deputy Mayor, I had a similar question, because around my house there is that green space that they have, and those dirt bikes use it all the time, and it's not a park. So we will have those deeper conversation when the legislation is ready, if anyone has any question. So is that all for us for ATV and dirt bikes, counselors? Okay,
Works for me.
all right.
I just want to say thanks to SPD, because I know, this is a problem in probably most district counselors' districts. We've got this really bad in Eastwood this year, and I want to thank them for being responsive. I heard from a lot of the constituents saying that they saw SPD actively responding. So thanks to the chiefs, thanks to everyone for your responsiveness on this issue and working with law to get this together for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. I think we can be successful again. I think we were good in 2020 and 19. I think we can make a difference in 21 with this. And then I would only other add is DMV. I'll send a quick website link. DMV has some really good summary stuff on this. A lot of the questions that were asked, I'll send that out to Councilor Majoke, who can pass it on. It's got a lot of good answers on registrations, insurance, where it can be operated, all that good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is Councilor Driscoll. You're right. I echo what you said. I think by the end of all of this, we will owe Chief Buckner some donuts, don't we, district councilors? Some donuts, right? All right.
Pleased and confused. Don't go cheap. Don't go cheap, Majestic. No Dunkin'. Go the high end stuff.
Okay. All right. Let's go to fireworks, Chief Trudell. Or is that not?
All right. So no, I'll do fireworks. This is a much different problem, and I started with dirt bikes for a reason. But fireworks are so pervasive in this city. We do have an operational detail. We did it last year. We deployed 16 details. We issued 17 arrests. Those arrests are based on the penal law charge. There's no city ordinance on fireworks. We looked into that, and Kristen can weigh in, but there's no city ordinance on fireworks. So we go with the penal law charges, unlawfully dealing, which is a violation. In order to get into your misdemeanors and felonies, you have to get into providing fireworks to underage kids, or selling or offering for sale really large amounts dollar-wise of fireworks. So we are typically issuing a violation arrest for setting off a bottle rocket. So 16 details, 17 arrests. We responded to 256 calls for service. And what I mean by that is not necessarily an immediate call for service, but constituent services. The chief's office will get complaints or tips on a problem house, right? That's repeatedly setting off fireworks. We just dealt with one on Paul Ave. We got on top of that right away. This detail is designed to address those specifically, try to talk to the offender, get them to comply willingly, and stop the fireworks stuff. So that is what the detail consists of. We go at it from, like I said, the communication and engagement piece of it, and also the enforcement. We will make the arrest and make the seizure. We made 8 seizures, and when I mean, I'm not talking about a single bottle rocket or whatever. I'm talking about significant seizures last year were 8 of those. We also target the corner stores. We got intel very early last year that the stores were selling fireworks. So we specifically went in in a manner to find out if they were had illegal fireworks for sale, and made those arrests accordingly. We also got tips from the community about people bringing in U-Hauls, literally, of fireworks and selling them from those U-Hauls. And our intelligence section made a very sizable arrest based on that information. So that's all good stuff coming in with fireworks tips. And we do have that same detail planned. We're monitoring the calls for service right now. When I last looked, we were getting maybe 1 or 2 a day. It's not to the point where it would be cost efficient to put a detail. We're still addressing them. Like I said, we responded to Paul Ave and we took care of that. But when we start to see the fireworks calls go up, and we're all going to know it, right? I'm sure we're going to start getting calls from everybody on this phone call about on this WebEx about it. We'll start to deploy those details out towards getting some compliance on this. But again, my concern with this one, and I'm just being frank, is that there's just so many folks that are using fireworks illegally. There's a disconnect. People don't understand what's legal and what's not legal. And when Onondaga County made fireworks legal some years ago, it's brought in a level of confusion as to what isn't legal, and that's where people are just lighting off everything. And we saw it last year. Hopefully it was a COVID 2020 type situation, and we're not going to see the same thing in 21. But I think that is all I wanted to say on fireworks, unless there's any questions on it.
Councilors, any questions? So Chief Trudell, you based on what you said about did somebody said something?
Yeah,
Someone's not muted.
I don't have a picture up. I'm Diane Borgon.
This is councilors meeting, ma'am.
Oh, so neighborhood watch people can't enter?
Unless priorly arranged, no.
Oh, okay, because I had it on the news that they were having this meeting.
Yes, for you to listen, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, it's definitely open to attend and to listen, but we don't unless previously arranged, we don't have members of the public commenting and questioning.
Okay, have a great day.
All right. But Diane?
Yeah.
Diane, we can give that exception with 2 minutes if you want to comment later. So just can you wait for a minute?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So Chief Trudell, you said something about a county making it legal years ago. Would this be something that maybe to kind of work together with the county to maybe share our struggle with them and see if we could get somewhere together collectively?
I think it's an option, but I think we've already looked into that to some degree.
Okay.
Kristen did a lot, and I hate to throw her under the bus here, but I know Kristen did a lot of looking into how we would opt out. And as a city, I'm pretty sure we can't, but again, I'm going to let her speak to that.
Okay, Kristen, and I know you shared something with me about a week ago regarding this, since I came to you crying, basically.
Well, there's the question you're asking now is about the opting in by the county to legalize certain types of fireworks, and that's a county based decision, not the city. And I think the county has its own reasons why it wanted to opt in. I think the city has been clear to the county about the issues that we're having inside the city, but I can't really speak to that intergovernmental conversation really. The other thing, the thing that I communicated to you, Counselor, that's worth sharing with everyone here today is that if we could locally pass legislation banning fireworks, we would. But unfortunately, the state law explicitly says that localities cannot legislate in this area, that it has to be dictated by state law. And so we are prohibited from passing a dirt bike type ordinance in the area of fireworks.
Okay, so that may need us to communicate with our state officials then. Okay.
Correct.
Council, let me ask a question if I could, Councilor Majuk.
Please go ahead.
Where do the fireworks come from outside the city? I mean, where do they come from? They come from Zambia, they come from across the state line. Where do they come from?
They're coming from across state lines, mostly.
Now,
The
you
illegal
might not
ones.
be. Years ago, I believe the city police used to be very proactive in as much as tracing where shipments came from, and occasionally would make arrests when people would come across the city line. They would get information that somebody had picked up a big cache of fireworks. You don't remember that? I mean, I remember that specifically under Chief Miguel and maybe Chief Sardino.
Yes, yeah, I remember. We used to partner with the state police on this as well, and the state police would do some of the same thing. They did that last year. The state police did that from Pennsylvania. It was in, I think, Syracuse.com towards the end of June. It was very close to July that they started doing that. But I do remember that from a state police angle. For sure.
Okay. I mean, the problem is so pervasive, in all the neighborhoods. I'm not sure exactly. I guess it'd be a situation where there was some liability or some sort of criminal liability you could attach to the homeowner or the landlord, Kristen, about, knowing that there are fireworks in the house and this consistently happens. Would that be a way to go about it? Or, you know what I'm trying to get at? Making somebody criminally liable?
I hear what you're saying. It's something we'd have to look into.
Okay.
Councilman Majuk, the challenge with what Councilor Hogan is bringing up is a good point. I will tell you that the tip of our frustration for this specific category and other quality of life charges that go into the court system is the courts are less enthusiastic, or I will either say unwilling or incapable of addressing these issues in the court system. So that's where some of these issues die, as far as when it comes time for real accountability for these infractions. We're not seeing that.
I couldn't agree with the chief more. Oftentimes, it seems like sometimes come upon a good idea that maybe emanates from downstate about neighborhoods and what kind of laws they could pass, and then we end up having a situation where we have the police department doing the best they can, but we can't adjudicate the problem as well as we want it to be. So.
Yeah, definitely, Councilor Hogan and Chief Buckner. We and Kristen, we need to have a conversation, a much deeper, focused conversation with our state representative, because these are problems that goes beyond our ability to do what we can. Definitely.
I saw in the
Did you
chat,
wanna say
Councilor
something?
Majuk, that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Greg Lowe. I was just going to.
Oh, thank you, councilors. I just wanted to add in quickly, Councilor Majuk, to your point about interaction with our local delegation. You're right. This is an important area of discussion that we can do more of. The issue of
fireworks, changes to state legislation on fireworks was one of our legislative priorities presented to our state delegation earlier this year. Specifically, we requested under Penal Law 405, Section 5B of the state law that the city would have the ability to opt out of the legalization of sparkling devices, which is what currently is legal in the county. Unfortunately, state law is written right now. It doesn't give cities with populations below 1 million to make such a designation. We're asking to change that to cities with a population of 100,000, which would give us the ability to opt out of sparkling devices, which, as Chief Trudell noted, when you go to the store and you see big signs that say fireworks for sale, you might logically conclude that all fireworks are legal. But what those signs are really referring to are the sparkling devices that don't leave the ground, which is what most, and don't explode, which is what you see in those locations. We need to get the ability in the city to make our own decisions about this and opt out of having these devices sold in the city. And I'd welcome the support of the council on that.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
Greg, we would welcome you be informing us of this. Some of us are sort of among some of our state representatives, and maybe we could help you out as far as talking to them.
I would love that. Thank you. I will take the initiative next to make sure all of you receive that information. Thanks.
I mean, we're not kidding ourselves. I mean, this is not only people think of fireworks and they think of, kids blowing them off and all that. But last year on one day, I had 2 fires in my council district, one on Turtle Street and one on the near west side that were set off by fireworks. So, I mean, and, it's just a really serious problem. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Councilor Driscoll, you had a follow-up question? You all set? You all set? Any other councilors' questions? All right, where's Diane? Diane, you have 2 minutes. We are going to give this exception at the moment. You have 2 minutes. You wanted to say something?
Yes, that would be greatly appreciated. I just want to make sure I understand. So, in our neighborhood watch, we actually, if you follow our page, it's Northside Neighborhood Watch. You're welcome to join. It's on Facebook. We play a game every night. Is it fireworks or gunshots? And it's kind of fun. We all try and guess. Most of the time it's fireworks. We call and nothing's being done. So they can't confiscate the fireworks. That's what I want to know.
So it's not as easy just to say that we're not going to confiscate fireworks. What we have to determine is, are the fireworks that we are looking to confiscate illegal? And if they are sparkling devices of a nature that throws up like a flower in the air, stays on the ground, or spins on the ground, then those are completely legal and we cannot confiscate them. They are legal to have. When it comes to the illegal fireworks, a good rule of thumb is if it goes bang or if it leaves the ground, that's illegal. And yes, we can confiscate those.
Yes,
confiscate. I'll just finish with this. Confiscating fireworks doesn't necessarily equate to making an arrest for fireworks, right? So if we see a quantity of illegal fireworks on the sidewalk where folks have been setting them off, we can take those. But to attribute ownership or possession, which is necessary to make an arrest, is very difficult at night in the dark when people do not cooperate, or I don't know whose fireworks those are. That's the type of situation that is different than the ATVs or dirt bikes when we observe that behavior and can do something about it. Fireworks, I'm sorry, go ahead, I'll leave it at that.
I'm sorry, we really don't have the dirt bike problem. Our problem is the fireworks and dogs that are barking all night long because of the fireworks going off, and the police come and they say, oh, drunken people, and we've had the police here. oh, they're just drunk and whatever, and they walk away. Why did they not walk away with a box of fireworks? Because for the next 3 weeks, there were fireworks going off. And this is on 7th North Street. I'll let you know exactly where I am. Pat Hogan knows where I am.
All right.
Certainly, I'll take that information down, but, you know,
The information I
constant-
know where she is, Chief.
Yeah,
I'm
she
like-
went to my house, Pat.
I know, Diane. I know.
I
Thanks,
can't pay
Diane.
for you.
All right. So could Diane, could you connect with Councilor Hogan and give him that address, and or maybe Chief Trudell? And thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me.
Oh, no problem. Okay. Any other question regarding fireworks before we move on? All right. Thank you, Chief Trudell. Go to loud music. Chief, you're muted.
I'll unmute myself. So I'm going to share with you an analysis that our crime analysis folks just did on local law violations. It's some data for you relative to what enforcement and what calls for service look like, that sort of thing. And I can share this with you. But down here, when I talk about local laws, these are the types of laws: open containers, animal intox, loiterings, and loud musics. And then parks violations would be a local law as well. So when you look at the calls for service, you can see this is broken out from 16 to 2021 year to date. That in 2020, we received a record number of citizen-generated calls for service for local laws. Officer initiated, 2020 being the year that it was as far as COVID and you know, a big push to reduce citizen officer contacts. We had a lower amount of officer initiated local law calls for service. But you can see the citizen generated ones are on the rise. And then when you go down to arrests, you can see that in years past, we average between 18 to 1,100 arrests, with 19 and clearly 2020 being a lower year. We started off with 92 already so far this year. And this is where it's kind of interesting. This is when you get into the number of people arrested more than once for local law violations. And that trend has been going down. If you see, if you look at 2016 through 2018, we were, you know, the high of 200 people were arrested more than once, 120. And you could see for 19 and then 2020 it going down. And this is the number of times those folks were, the number of people that were arrested multiple times. So arrested twice, there was 486. And then so on and so forth down the chart. So that's some data relative to local laws. Our stance is the same as far as enforcement. We will continue to enforce loud musics, park violations, any of the ones that are listed on this deal. Our first step is to try to negotiate an outcome that doesn't result in an arrest. Turn the music down, get off the street with your open container, park is closed. But where we can't, we will make the arrest for those. But our first option is to de-escalate it and try to resolve the situation without the arrest. When we are forced to make an arrest, and I'll just kind of echo what Chief Buckner said to this, our hands are tied drastically when it comes to how these are handled from an accountability stance at the courts. And I know some of you are aware there's a meeting this week with Judge Murphy relative to that, and I won't get into that too much, but that is the other piece of the equation relative to you know, a city that is you know, holding folks accountable for those times when you can't de-escalate a situation and come to a peaceful resolution relative to a local law and have to make an arrest.
Questions, councilors? So does the arrest, Chief Trudell, does the arrest include an officer showing up to a resident multiple times in one night? Would that constitute an arrest for a noise ordinance, for example?
So it could, yes. There's certain situations where we get to a zero tolerance, especially when we get repeated neighborhood complaints or calls from the counselors or calls from constituent services about a problem. And we have one of those over on the east side right now we're trying to deal with. We've knocked on the door, we've explained that multiple citizens have called on this. We try it that way, but we'll make an arrest when we go back, and that's what gets communicated. So yes, that could potentially be an arrest.
Okay, so for, and yes, I don't know about Councilor Hogan and Councilor Driscoll, but there are residents in my district that are just well known for loud music, right? And on all, a neighbor would make a call, an officer show up, tell them to turn it down, and maybe well for that night, and then the following night or the following week, it's the same situation. It's the same situation. Does that also qualify for an arrest in any way?
Well, I guess that's a harder one, because unless it rises to the level where we are letting officers know that's the case, you may have different officers that respond. And also, I would also caution that, this is another one of those situations where we just can't make an arrest. We have to have probable cause to make an arrest, right? So when we get on scene and the music is not where it needs to be, or not at a level, that constitutes a violation, we can't make that arrest. Even if it was turned down seconds before our arrival and gets turned up seconds after we leave. So we do get a lot of complaints. The officers got here, they didn't do anything. Well, we're bound by the law. The same way we're bound by the law not to make a fireworks arrest when we can't prove possession, but we'll seize the fireworks. So, it's not always the case that, the officer's just not making an arrest. There's probably, and good reason why the arrest wasn't made.
Now, yeah, okay, thank you. Now, there's that, and I'm not looking at the noise ordinance in front of me, but I think there might be a section there that says that an officer could confiscate a property. So, say maybe like a radio. Has that been done, Chief, or am I just not remembering correctly?
No, that does occur. We've used that for problem party locations. Dablon Court, I'll use for an example. Pub Dablon. When that happens, we will confiscate the sound system as evidence. People can come and get it back, but that'll solve the problem for that night, and for obvious reasons why we do that. When it comes to people's homes, that doesn't happen as much. No, we don't take sound systems out of people's homes. If you're on the street and it's a loud music situation that can't continue because there's a potential for really honestly violence, or a fight or something like that, then yes, we'll take those in those situations. But it really dictates, the situation dictates that.
As a district councilor, that's one of my problems. There are areas where, as a district councilors, we can solve those problems by having conversation with those residents, and there are situations where it goes beyond reasoning with the resident. I don't know what else from your perspective that we could do to be able to make sure that those problem residential areas are addressed. This is a problem, Chief Trudell. This is a problem for us,
Yep.
and I don't know, how do we go forward with addressing those recurrence? Yeah.
So I think the reoccurrence situations, either you can contact me or the district captain. And I can't remember who got me the information. I think it was constituent services over at City Hall. The same exact situation over at over in the west side of the east side of the city. I can't remember. It's over by Ramsey's Market. I can't remember the exact street, but we know the house because the counselor let us know. We know the house because multiple citizens let us know. And at that point, the captains can tell the officers on the shifts, we've already warned them, this is the situation that we're at, please issue a ticket from this point. But, you know, I think that's a good way to go. I think that's going to get your problem houses taken care of. But that only is the arrest. And I really want to stress that because, you know, there's warrants that have been recently vacated. There's talks of not issuing fines, not even doing community court on this. That's another situation that if not addressed, there's going to be no repercussions. It doesn't matter if you get a ticket, because if you don't show up for court, you don't get a warrant, or if you don't show up for court, you don't get a fine. So, you know, it is a significant part of the situation, or part of the problem.
And I know Councilor Hogan, you want to go. And Chief Trudell, I have a situation like that in the Valley, and neighbors are frustrated with it.
Okay.
Captain Lynch is aware of this, and maybe good to follow up with him. He's aware of this, and it's a
I will definitely
situation
follow up with him.
whereby we just keep getting the officers are doing their job. They issued the ticket, and nothing happened, and it's repetitive. So if the court system is quote unquote failing us on that direction, what else could we do to be able to address something like that, where multiple tickets have been issued and no repercussion, and they keep getting dropped. They keep getting dropped. What?
Yeah, let me be clear, because I don't want to, certainly my intention is not to throw the court system out as failing, because I don't know the situation with your address in the Valley. I'm not saying that. Let me find out if there has been tickets issued. Let me find out what has a warning been done, because I don't want to say that that's the particular case in the case of the Valley. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Okay. Yeah. No. I'm not, and I'm not saying the quote unquote statement that is yours. I said that.
Okay.
I said that because I'm tired of it. The residents are tired of it, and there's nothing else we can do other than the court system actually doing their part.
Councilman Majoke.
Yes.
You know, for everyone that is elected or appointed, the needle really moves when voters get involved. If the chief is complaining about it, that's one issue. If the common council is complaining about it, that's another issue. When people who vote collectively raise their voice, elected officials listen.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. And that 10 years should be revisited.
Yeah. Yeah. The 10-year term sort of, 10-year term sort of prevents a lot of those voters from remembering. So that's a whole generation, Chief. Chief Trudell, I was wondering if and I love that the graph you showed, because it's always been my opinion that, you know, very few of our citizens are causing 10% of our citizens, maybe 5% of our citizens are causing 90% of the problems. But it's my understanding that you'll issue a quality of life ticket to somebody, or the police will issue a quality of life ticket to somebody, and then that person won't show up to court. It's about, what is that, about 50% of the time? Is there a figure there?
I don't remember the exact number, and maybe somebody else that was on the call, Chief McGurk's here, when we met with the judge, but it was a significant amount that were either dismissed or nobody showed.
And then the judge issues a bench warrant, correct?
That's typically how it goes. But again, there's been some pretty strong indication that won't be the case going forward without some input.
There'll certainly be some input for me on that. But I mean, so when the bench warrant's issued, and you come to a situation like Councilor Majoke is talking about, does a police officer ask for the person's name to see if a bench warrant's been issued for the person?
Oh yeah, we'll do a warrant check. Yeah.
So, and a lot of times that warrant check comes up that what happens then? Do you arrest the person if he has a warrant out for him?
Yeah, if there's a bench warrant for it, then that's a bookable offense because the judge wants to see them. So we will take them to jail for that.
Now,
that
if it's a
night.
bookable offense for not showing up for a bench warrant for like loud music, and that person's got a warrant out, what happens to him? Does he go down to he goes down, has to sit until a judge sees him,
Yes.
and then he's released probably because it's not a a serious offense, correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how the judges have worked that, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the judge's purview, time served, whatever the case may be. That's on the, as long as we
I mean,
get them
just so
before
you
the
know,
judge.
just so you know, a situation like Councilor Majuk, and I know a lot of the city councilors are the same way, but when I have a particular problem house, I'll send a letter, and the letter will be a very terse letter, telling them that I know about the issue that their neighbors are having, and please cease. And then that'll provoke a conversation with that person, and then I'll like follow it up with other, let's say not legal remedies that might help the neighborhood. For instance, like if they're, they have a codes issue or something. So, we're trying our best too, because I believe that, you're like Council Majuk has said, and the other councilors have said, a lot of times the police do their job, but it gets to the courts and we have a disappointing result sometimes.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Chief Trudeau. We have a last one, juvenile break-ins.
All right, I'm gonna have to apologize. What was on my agenda was dirt bikes, fireworks, and localized. I did not have the juvenile break-ins, but I can speak to it, so just bear with me, I guess. So each of the captains is responsible for their districts, obviously. And every Thursday we have a ComStat meeting where we talk about whatever the crime was that occurred for the previous week. That is where the captains will say, okay, I am going to put a burglary detail because we're having a problem in Tip Hill. And I use these examples specifically because this is recent, either Tip Hill or Sedgwick, right? We just had a burglary problem in Sedgwick. So, and Captain Fournier will run a detail based on whatever crime type, or Captain Urema will run a detail based on whatever crime type comes up. Juvenile break-ins is part of that. Strathmore was inundated with those, and we all remember that time when we did a lot of work, and we still continue to work. Sergeant Malinowski just went through that area with some interns and his folks, hanging door hangers to let people know to keep their doors locked and to keep stuff out of their cars as far as valuables. So really what drives us is the crime, that operational meeting on Thursdays, and then the captains honestly being held accountable to do something about crime when it's in their areas. And I'm not even going to get into the fact that they're juveniles, and that opens up a whole other layer of things that happen with juveniles when they get arrested. But as far as the police department goes, that is how we operate on all levels, really, based on the data.
Any follow-up, Councilor Hogan, Councilor Driscoll, and other councilors?
If I could just say, Chiefs, I appreciate your efforts. Last week we really got hit up on Tipperary Hill pretty good, and the police were very active up here. In fact, right down the street from my house, I was awoken by somebody throwing paving stones through a convenience store window, and the police showed up immediately. But I think because they were down there, they didn't show up on a robbery up to Schuyler. It seemed like they had coordinated assaults on the neighborhood, because it all happened the same night, maybe 3 or 4 robberies and a break-in at a store. So I just want to thank you for your efforts there. And by the way, Chief Buckner, the police officer that interviewed me, gave me his card. So I compliment you on that too.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that.
So Chief Trudeau, I remember about two years plus ago that Chief Buckner, Chief, you might remember this. Chief Buckner, you might remember this. You came to Burns over there in Fire Burns at Strathmore neighborhood, and you spoke. You know, it was a huge meeting, and I remember the conversation you had with the neighbors, and you gave a lot of insight, especially how the neighbors should lock their door, lock their windows, and all of that. I don't know if you remember that, but it was a very informed meeting. And I'm bringing this up because the level of concern that the neighbors raise, especially when it comes to juvenile, it become a matter of safety issue. You know, as juvenile are sneaking in, and it, you know, and it become a matter of their own safety. And I don't know in terms of as a department. And I know sometimes when you make an arrest, the court has to take over from there. I don't know what are some of your frustration when it comes to dealing with juveniles. That's what my question is. Especially dealing with juvenile and the court system. Is there a collaboration there, or is there a breakdown? Number two, I also have heard that it's pretty much the same juveniles, almost the same juveniles that are doing the break-in. Is that accurate?
Well, I will tell you that to your first point, I believe the number was somewhere in the neighborhood of about 50% of the vehicles stolen in our city last year. The keys were in the vehicle. So that hurts us big time. And then when you talk about the juveniles, the juveniles are just like the adults. We have a core group of individuals that cause the primary issues in our city. We have certainly, I guess we feel like we have more tools and things to deal with adults than we do the juveniles. There's not enough facilities to be able to send the juveniles. You know, we've gone through, you know, criminal justice reform, which in some regard has picked alternative ways to deal with some of the juveniles, rightly so, because we don't want to saturate our criminal justice system with young people who have many, many problems before they commit a crime. You know, no one wakes up and starts out as a criminal. There are many pillars in that individual's life that has gone wrong before they begin to act out in that way. And we would love to be able to have those wraparound comprehensive services to address these kids, particularly the ones that are most at risk or that are starting to illuminate early signs that they are headed to the criminal justice system. But I will tell you that you know, quite frankly, yes, we get frustrated with the juvenile system because, you know, we're picking up kids with guns. You know, the shooters and the victims of violent crime are getting younger, and it's very, very frustrating. That's not a court system problem. That's not a police problem. It's a societal problem, and people will often point to the court system or point to police, and we are, you know, one spoke in that rim. School system is a spoke. The church is a spoke. The family should probably be the engine and transmission of that child. So there are many things that need to be addressed, but it's very, very frustrating because we feel like, you know, from a law enforcement standpoint, that a lot of those issues end up at the front door of the police department, and we're just not equipped to address all of the issues that those young people are coming with.
Thank you, Chief. And you know, I personally, I do, and many other counselors do understand your frustration, and there's not a lot. There's not a lot people can really do other than the fact that, as you said, it become, you know, a issue that arise from individual families. So I don't know, Councilor Hogan, you have anything? Councilor Driscoll? Anything else?
No, I don't. And you know, as the council, we're trying to give you as much help as we possibly can. Both of you. You know, with the new class, maybe that'll bring you up to more of amenable deployment levels down the road. But of course, they won't be out of their, I don't know what, it takes 8 months, 9 months before they're back on the streets. So we'll just hang in there, I guess. Thank you, Counselor.
Yeah, our next class is scheduled to graduate probably about that second weekend in December. And then they have 12 weeks of field training, minimum 12 weeks, before they will be released to go solo. Today, I believe we sit in the neighborhood of about 370. And the folks who have been here for years have said they don't remember us ever being below 400. So we have to get through the rest of the summer, the early fall of this year. So we will continue to drop before we will have some relief, probably sometime in the early spring this year, of adding 25 or 30 people to the ranks of whatever, who knows what that number will be.
Now, Chief, just off topic a little bit, and regarding what you just said, is there a law that specifically says that you can only do one class at a time, or is it a matter of logistics?
Great question. It's logistical for us. We can probably manage a class of, I would say, no more than 40, probably comfortably 35. But we probably wouldn't want to get past 40 because when you talk about moving them, when we're doing things like driver's training or we're doing things like firearms, you only have so many lanes to be able to do that, and you'll have people standing around wasting a lot of time while they wait for their turn to go, versus if you have that class of 30, you can do 15 people at the firearms center site, and then the other 15 would maybe be doing defensive tactics or something somewhere else. When you get beyond that, it becomes a logistical challenge for us. I will tell you that having the resources that we now have at OCC will help with some of the classroom portion of that, because we have more space out there to be able to do some of the things that we need to do. But the defensive tactics, the driving, the firearms, all of those things become logistically very challenging when we get beyond that 35 or so in a class. So to your point, even though the mayor, deputy mayor, and you guys have funded us for 2 classes in this next budget, this 22 budget, it will take us a year and a half before we even see the fruit of those individuals on the street. So it's a very slow addition to our workforce that we get, which is why retention is so important, because it takes us so long to replace officers.
Now with that, Chief, what about using multiple sites for classes like that? For example, using a contractual process to be able to put on two classes simultaneously. Is that something you have ever considered, or would it just kind of stretch out the personnel to the point that it become unmanageable?
Well, you make a good point there, and it's an intelligent question. The issue for us there would then be instructors. And then the problem with that, when we're at 370 officers, Chief McGort, a lot of his guys, because of their areas of expertise, are instructors. So now we're pulling them from the road to go and teach. And now if I'm doing that with 1 class versus 2 classes, now I'm losing investigators or people that work for Rich that we need on the street. So it kind of works against you because we can only pay so many people from a minimum staffing standpoint to be able to have the minimum level that we need to go on the streets effectively. So again, it becomes a logistical issue for us. And we just, obviously going through the pandemic and trying to survive what we did with losing officers and not being able to do a class. When you have something like that happen, for example, the mayor got us to about 425 or so, almost 430, which was a good operational number for us. Missing those classes that we missed, it will take us a couple of years minimum to get back to that number to where we're comfortable again, even though we have the money. Here's the other challenge. Every class that I've hired, the mayor has given me full authorization to hire for my full contingency. So if I had 38 vacancies, I've always had enough money to hire for every vacancy that I had. The problem is we've never been able to find enough people. So even if I have 40 vacancies, we're lucky if we get 32 people in the class. And then you're going to lose 10% of them through attrition of the normal academy. So none of it's simple, none of it's easy. We're just going to have to try to hang on the next 18 months before we get resources to help us out. And it's going to be tough.
Other counselors?
Counselor, could I ask one more question? And this is just a
Please.
specific logistical question. Chief Fidel or Chief Buckner, concerning the Tipperary Hill incidents over the last, this was Friday morning around 3 o'clock. One, and I don't know if this is some sort of a logistical mishap or what, but 2 cars were stolen on Schuyler at 2:30, and a phone call was called in. This store down the street from my house was broken into about 50, and I called around 3. One location, the police didn't show up for 4 or 5 hours, the Schuyler Avenue location, but the location right down the street from me, and they didn't know I was a city councilor, I was the store, they showed up like in 3 minutes. I mean, could you just look into that? It's a weird logistical conflation, I guess, how
Yeah,
that happened.
I will definitely look into it. It's but I think it is, and I'm pretty confident in saying this, it's a priority issue. So that burglary at the store is going to get dispatched as the priority one, and we have a 3 to 4 minute response time on priority ones, that being the burglary. A stolen vehicle investigation is going to be a priority 3, and that's the response, probably why you got that. But I will definitely look into that.
Yeah, Chief, I think maybe it was the way it was called in, because cars stolen after the people entered the house and grabbed keys off. There wasn't a break-in per se. The front door happened to be open, but so if you could look into that, I'd be interested to see how that happened, because they were right at the store, literally 2 minutes after I called.
Yep.
3 minutes after I called.
I can do that.
Excuse me, it was Ulster Street, not Schuyler.
We have a question from Mr. Campanis about transfers. We do periodically accept lateral transfers from other agencies. We do have a pretty vigorous process when we vet those individuals, because obviously we want to try to get people's best, and so we put them through a pretty lengthy process. But I think we have 3, maybe 4 folks that we're actually processing right now that are laterals, and it is a much shorter time period that it takes us to get those individuals on the street.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody else? Counselors? Well, Chief Buckner, Chief Trudell, and all your team, I want to thank you on behalf of all the counselors in the community for the work you all do. Thank you for taking the time today to come and have this discussion with us. We appreciate you very much. That will do it for us today. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.